Welcome to the Unfiltered Friends podcast, where we humanize your favorite creators through their personal stories and then learn something from them. I hope you feel inspired by today's guest, and if you do, share it with someone who needs it. So without further ado, here is Unfiltered Friends. Hello, Unfiltered Friends. Today we have on Mercury Stardust, the trans handyman, which I love a pun. I love a pun so much. It makes me that was initially what made me follow you. I was like, handyman, absolutely. And then I got to know you as a creator, and it was even more wonderful. But say hello to everyone.
Well, hi everyone.
And also, I'm obsessed with your laugh because when people laugh that hard, you know it's coming from a real place. Like when I belly laugh, when I snort, you know that it's real.
I laugh all the time too. It doesn't take much. I'm an easy laugh, but also like I'll take an easy laugh over a hard laugh anytime. Like I'm having fun and giggling all the time. So you know that, I'm just an overall happy person.
But have you always been that way? Have you always been like an overall positive person, or was that something you had to develop?
Oh, when you grow up in a northern Wisconsin town and your dad is like super duper farmer man, you kind of have to be able to laugh or you be crying a lot. So, not to get dark right out of the gate, but
let's get dark.
It's a mechanism. It's a defense mechanism, And my dad, even though he was not a great person to me when I was growing up as a kid, he was also an extreme big laugher. Like our family, often we would laugh at each other, not necessarily with each other, but like we were big laughers. Our whole family, like you just knew one of us was around when you heard,
I love that. Yeah, it's when I figured out where you live after researching you, and then you're a trans person. I understand that area, as I am from that area a little bit. I can imagine that your process of coming to an understanding of your identity had to have had extra layer of difficulty there in a rural area, but also with a farmer dad. Like a lot of these things are not aligning for, shall we call, acceptance. Was that true for you?
Oh, yeah. But you know what it does align for, though? Really good at handy shit.
Yeah, that's true.
You know what I mean? So, like, yeah, you're right. It doesn't align with, LGBTQ friendly upbringing. But it does align with, like, learning how to survive in a world that is pretty rough and tumble sometimes. Mm-hmm. And even though I wish I had gentle parenting done to me when I was a kid. I wish I had supportive parents when I was a kid. But the plus side to all of it is that I survived in spite of those abuse, and I survived in spite of those negative aspects. But it also built a very strong layer of like, I'm going to do what I'm going to do, and no one's going to stop me. So, I've had to rise past it. But now that I've risen past that part of my life, everything else is just like, an easy downhill slope, instead of me climbing a 500, story building every day.
Mm-hmm. Did you have a natural affinity towards fixing things, or was that a way for you to connect and be safe in your environment? Which one was it for you? Was it both?
If it wasn't a Barbie, I didn't know how to do anything with it. Like I was inept when it came to anything masculine. My dad would chase me around a baseball diamond and, just push me in the mud and just scream at me and stuff all the time whenever we did anything with t-ball or baseball. So I didn't really have a natural affinity to anything that was traditionally masculine. But when my father would treat me in such a way, I started learning, well, if I don't start learning how to adapt to this world, I'm not going to be able to survive. And I do think, in spite of all my feelings and my things my dad has done to me, I do believe there was a frame and a thought from him where this kid is so different that if I don't get this kiddo to be in a spot of like, being able to survive in this world that's not gonna like her. I don't think she's gonna survive. That's honestly what I think my dad thought for a long time. Don't think it's a natural, like a really healthy way to upbring a kid, but I do think there's some good intention behind it, because it wasn't like he was the only person who was an awful person towards a queer community in my neck of the woods. You know what I mean? Like, you know, there was it wasn't abnormal for at least once a year or twice a year at my high school where someone who was, you know, had the affinity to be a little bit queer, you know, unalived themselves. It wasn't an abnormal thing. One of my best friends in high school unalived herself. A year before that, someone I knew unalived themselves. And it was very like, you know, everyone knew that they had the affinity for the queerness. So like, even it was just a very prevalent reality for us. So I didn't know how to fix anything, but my dad forced me to learn how to do stuff. But I always thought about things way different than him. Like I was really bad at it for quite a while. And then all of a sudden I started being really good at it because my grandpa would tell my dad, you know, this kid doesn't get the way that you're teaching them, but there is something there. There's something there. So just listen to them. And that changed everything, because then I started fixing things in very different ways than my dad, but it would always work, right? So like, I'm trying to think of a good example, but even just look at drywall. There's 500 different ways to fix drywall, and everyone has an opinion of what is the best way to fix drywall. You know, you get your California patch, you get your 1-for-1 patch, you got all these different kind of patches you could do. What is the best way? Whatever the best way is what you're currently doing. It's like there is a reason why you're patching it the way you need to patch it. And sometimes it's going to be this way and sometimes it's going to be the other way. But knowing all those differences, knowing all the different paths to fix something is just as important as knowing the right way to fix something, right? And I don't think there is anything such as the right way. There's
Does it get
better
fixed?
ways and wrong ways. Yes, yeah, exactly. Does it get fixed, and are you safe afterwards? Those are the things that are important.
It's so interesting. I'm drawing some parallels between, I mean, without the element of being trans, but my dad learned how to fix drywall from his abusive stepfather, and that was his way of adapting. And I think grandma also taught him, when you get angry, punch something you can fix, and you can't fix people. So my dad would put his fist through drywall, and his adaptation was to fit in with that environment, because he would get respect for showing up in that way, was to learn it. So he has all those skills, just maybe not the best connection to those memories.
But I think that's what happens a lot with masculinity, right? Like we don't really go in depth in those things. We go in depth in maybe how to fix something, but we don't go in depth into with emotional aspects of things. And I think a lot of times, if you ask a person, why are you fixing something the way that you're fixing it, they will say something along the lines, because this is the way I was taught. And I think that relates to emotions, and I think that relates to reality too. Like, why you believe in the things that you believe in? Why are you doing the things that you're doing? Always because this is how you were shown. Yeah. And because this is how you're shown, there is no other alternative to that. And I think that's always been the problem, right? There's an alternative for me. There's always been an alternative for me. So when I naturally got into handy stuff, the more that I went down that path, the more that I went to the alternative. To me, my very existence is different than everyone else's. I might not have had the vocabulary, the words, or the understanding of myself, but I knew that there was something different. So I always went the different path, right? Which is often poked fun at, ridiculed. You know, I was often told that I was an idiot for the way I did things. And now I look back and I go, no, I wasn't. I actually was in the right path. But because they want you to do things in a certain way, in a certain order, you're perceived a certain way.
It has to connect to their perceived reality, not just what works for fixing the issue. I think the emotional aspect could be also connected to a bit of ego, Like my way is the way to do it. And if you do it another way, then that attacks. I think it's a lot of what you see on social media right now, especially is ideas are no longer ideas. Ideas are identities. So if you attack this idea, which is in this example, a way that you fix something, you're not attacking the idea. You are attacking me as a person. And if you don't have the emotional regulation to process that, it can manifest itself in not the best ways.
100%. I think you hit the nail right in the head. Ha ha ha. Puns. But I do generally think that is a large part of it. I think that, people will say you're looking too much into it. And when people say those kind of phrases to me, I'm like, you're actually not looking enough into it. Your actions stem from something within inside your head. And if you're not examining why your actions are your actions and why you're responding to certain things, I think you do yourself a great disservice and other people's disservice. When you're having a negative response to something, regardless if you think you're on the right or not, you should examine why you're having that response. That's what growth is. And that's how we learn how to fix stuff in general. Right? You ask yourself, why are you doing it this way? And is this truly the best way? The same thing applies to us as human beings,
Yeah, but the challenging those ideas is painful for a lot of people. People just don't want to admit that either there's a different way of doing something, or maybe their mindsets about things are harmful or wrong, and they entrench themselves in that idea. And it's like, it's so frustrating as someone who wants to like bridge a gap and like have conversations between groups where people are like, this is my idea, your idea is wrong. And it's so polarized at this point that no progress happens at all. And then you see the stuff that's going on with a lot of the legislation where people are just, I feel like, falling back into, like, we already had a long ways to go, but I feel like right now society, we're taking step back for a lot of things that are very pertinent to your community, especially.
I saw this 10 years ago. Me and my very good friend Matthew have talked about
Matthew.
This. Yeah, we love Matthew.
We love Matthew,
who is my sound engineer now in my life. But Matthew and I were. He was my co-host of a weekly burlesque show that I did for years here in tropical Madison, Wisconsin. But Matt and I talked about this years ago, about how the harder that we pushed for equality, the more that we became vocal about things, the more the strength of the voices to push those voices out became. And I think that there was such a huge misunderstanding of what will happen sometimes when we make progress. I think that, like, I saw this because I worked in an industry that was dominated by conservative men, right? So I would go to nightclubs and be with all my friends, and they would make fun of the blue collar people all the time and talking about how uninformed they are and, all that stuff. And then I would go to work, and then I would hear these people who, definitely went about things in a much more rough and tumble way, but were really well informed. And I think that is the part that people missed, especially in the 2016 election, is that there was a lot of people who, even if they were not informed incorrectly, they knew about issues in ways that a lot of people, honestly, who are leftists, don't always know all the issues. We get burnt out by it because we're empathetic, and we try to be empathetic. But when you are really worried about self-preservation, like a lot of people in the blue-collar industry is, then you have a very different approach to things. You want to be aware of the issues so you can make sure you make the best decision for yourself, and no one else matters. You and your family matters, and that's it. And I think that mentality, that's the big disconnect, where I think there is one humongous group of people who want to help each other, and there's another group of people who think by helping each other, they weaken their individuality in their family units. And I think that is the biggest disconnect. And until we understand how to patch that disconnect up, I don't think you fix this.
Or think an aspect of it is being able to talk to each other. And that is, it's So when I was covering a lot of like LGBT issues on my YouTube channel for a long time, I would sit and talk to people that I disagreed with. I'd sit and talk to, and I wouldn't make content surrounding it. I was just educating myself. I would sit and talk to transphobes. I'd sit and talk to homophobes. But it's not because I advocate their behavior, but now I'm educated on their mindset. And I think too often what people are doing now is, instead of trying to just have a conversation, exchange ideas, they're trying to change the way the other person thinks with one conversation. And that's never going to breed understanding.
I call myself a gateway queer because
queer.
I call myself a gateway queer because think about it for a second, right? I'm in an industry that is dominated by people who are not like me, right? And now the majority of people who follow me are, queer, single moms, right? But there are definitely men in the industry who follow me, right? Who follow me because I'm damn good at what I do. I'm very intelligent. I'm very well informed. And I try to make sure that I'm always as well informed as the next person, if not more. But that means that I'm a source of information for them, right? And if they trust me enough to listen to me about how to fix, their tire, or how to fix a certain thing in their home, or a ceiling fan or something, maybe they trust me enough to listen to my life experience. And that's where I focus. I don't focus on what's right and wrong. I focus on my life experience. Because if they like me enough to listen to me, maybe they like me enough to actually see a point of view. Now, it probably won't be the thing that sways them completely, but it could be a stepping stone, hence gateway queer. Because it gets you into the door, it gets you into the village of queer, right? You just opens, it cracks up the little door, and maybe they can step into it, but you got to invite them in. I know it's scary. But if you don't invite them into your home, they'll never see you as a person. So you have to be willing to open the door, and then you got to make sure that you don't close it right away when you're getting a bad vibe. You got to just ride it out. And it's very hard to do. That's an extremely difficult thing to do. And not my place to tell other people to do it. But for me, that's what I want to do. And I think we do it quite well.
Yeah, it is a brave thing. You just have to possess the emotional capacity to talk to someone who might hate who you are, what you are, you have to be able to sit across, because you say gateway queer. I always say, for me, I'm a thought disruptor. I'm not trying to change your mind, though I hope you do, but I'm going to implant a little seed of new information, and I hope it grows, and I hope you use it. If you don't, you can no longer claim ignorance because I've educated you.
A thought disruptor is a much more intelligent way to describe that.
Well, I can't call myself a gateway queer, so I'm going to go with thought disruptor. I would get into a lot of trouble if I started doing it.
Yeah. I mean, again, there's some perks to being very queer.
Yeah. But I mean, you get into trouble too. Like, you probably face within your own community some things that I have faced, where if you do sit and you do talk to someone, you invite them, so to speak, into your home to have that conversation, a lot of people will look at that as you advocating or rising that person's status in some way. How do you respond to that, or do you face backlash for that?
I really don't face almost any backlash for it. I think the reason why is because people know that I tread very lightly on that, right? Like I don't invite my platform to alt-right hate. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yes.
I think sometimes the things I see the most on TikTok, especially on Instagram as well, but on TikTok more than almost on any other platform, I'll see people responding or stitching or duetting people who are just, what are you doing?
What's the point?
What are you doing?
Yeah.
All you're doing is you're elevating a voice of hatred or clout chasing. You're not necessarily having a conversation. What I like to do, instead of speaking, as if I'm talking to them by doing a stitch when you're not talking to them, you're speaking over them by doing a stitch, not talking to them. And that needs to be reframed in how we approach this type of media. What I like to do is use my voice to talk about these subjects with nuance. And sometimes you do get a little bit of like pushback. I mean, I worked with Lowe's, right? So by working with Lowe's, which is a company that Yeah, I mean it's more left than other hardware companies, but it's still a major corporate, company. So you're going to have people who are like, yeah, but Lowe's did this, Lowe's did that. And yeah, but you know what else Lowe's does? Lowe's pays our bills. So me as a queer person can pay other queer people in order to support another group of queer people online. And sometimes we have to understand nuance. We're not going to fix the world all by neglecting the reality of capitalism. So I hate capitalism very strongly, but there is ways to use it in our benefits to help each other currently and not 30 years down the road.
Yeah.
And I think that, again, a Band-Aid, it's a Band-Aid. It's not a great solution, but I work in these fixes every single day, right? I grew up in an industry for 16 years where I couldn't always just repair the whole wall. I had to repair patches. And I have the same mentality when it comes to this, right? I can't fix everything, but maybe I can raise a little bit of money for trans healthcare. Maybe I can educate, a person here and there when it comes to hate. And maybe I can have a conversation with someone who is, a little bit more right than me and bring them a little bit closer to the center. Maybe. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But at least my voice was there,
I mean, the one of the strongest indicators for someone getting over their bias, say, for an example, they're transphobic, is having someone that they know who's trans. You know, and if they never,
100%.
if no one who's trans ever talks to them, how are they supposed to cure that ignorance whatsoever? And I understand you need to stay safe, but if you have the capacity, that could make a major difference for a lot of people.
This is where this is really important to talk about.
Okay.
Is being a white trans person is the privilege and the position that I hold, right? So you're right. But I think it becomes more difficult the more marginalized you are, right?
100%.
And I think, like, for me, I know my privileges. We're in a basement of a historical building here in Madison, and we are behind thick brick, and we are in we have like several security doors. It's hard to hurt me in this building, right? And I'm protected at home as well. I'm sitting on a place of privilege, and I know I can say things and be a lot safer than other people can. And I do think it's my responsibility as an ally to other marginalized groups, right? And as a trans person myself, but as an ally to other groups, I think it's really important to not be a passive ally and to be an active advocate or an active, person in their trying to get over oppression or through oppression or trying to break down that wall. Mm-hmm. So it can be really difficult, but those conversations need to happen. And if you're listening to this and you also are an ally to the trans community, I think it's your job to elevate our voices, not speak over us, but elevate our voices, right? And those are things that can definitely happen.
It's as someone who's been an ally in the community for a long time, it is, I will admit, sometimes really difficult and at times dangerous to enter those conversations because the backlash can be pretty extreme. So how do I, as someone who's not LGBT, who wants to be an ally, what in your opinion is a way for me to speak on those issues while not speaking over the people who have those issues?
Such a good question. I think that being rehearsed in these things, but by just listening to me right now, you're kind of doing it. You're kind of doing it. Do you know what I mean? And I think that it's that simple sometimes. And then when you have a conversation, you can always say, you know what, there's a woman by the name of Mercury Stardust who teaches compassionate DIY on the internet. And her lived-in experiences, even her as a nice, sweet person who's just trying to help people, she gets death threats on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So is that right? Does that make that okay? And then if their response is something around the lines of we all get death threats, and based off of your gender or not, you know what I mean? It's a very important contrast to make. And I think that those kind of things, listening to our stories and then retelling those stories, and then redirecting them to our voices makes a huge difference. I also think that, like, you know, it's as simple as people sometimes do editing a video and putting a black screen on the other side. Yeah, does it necessarily get the views? No. But does it showcase that your willingness to uplift our voice without speaking over us or showcasing your own voices? I think it does. I think it says a lot about your character and about the kind of ally you want to be.
Yeah. I think that there's it's so since the beginning. So I started getting involved with that sort of advocacy in 2008. And it's become much more complicated to enter those conversations. And thankfully, there's so much more representation. Because when I first started, I didn't even know what transgender was. You know, that wasn't really something people talked about.
I didn't know either.
Yeah. I mean, we could talk about that. I mean, I was surprised you came out as trans in 2019 is what I researched.
Well, you did real good. Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Came out 2019, January 18th.
I mean,
2019.
That is and when did you start to realize that you were trans?
27. I was probably 27 years old, like 4 years prior. I baby stepped myself, right? Like when I was like 7 or 8 years old, I knew I was different. You know what I mean? Like I related more to every single girl, woman, lady around me. All I ever did when I played video games was I was always the woman character.
Yeah.
I always related to the female leads and everything. And I could not understand, you know, like I just thought it was like normalized in my brain. You know, I made several TikToks about this, but like I would be on job sites with people and, you know, I would talk to people about stuff and they would bring things up and I would be like, yeah, I mean, everyone wants a pair of tits, right? That's a thing everyone wants, you know? And then the other guys would look at me and be like,
what?
Yeah. Sure. I mean, tits are nice. I don't want them on my chest.
I would play with them, but not have them. There's a difference.
Yeah, 100%, right? So, but there was things like that. It just normalizes in your brain. And I also conflated the idea of gender identity being the same as sexuality.
Right.
So for the long time for me, you know, when I was, I'm pansexual, right? But when I was a kid, I didn't have terminology for that. So when I was younger and I was in high school and I liked boys, but I also was attracted to girls, I thought that I was gay because I didn't think there was another option.
It's so common.
Right? I didn't know there was another lane. So I came out as a gay kid when I was like 16 or 17 years old.
How'd that go?
Awful. I got kicked out of the house, lived on my own for a year or so while I finished high school. And me and my best friend, Danny, lived together for a hot minute before, you know, we went to college.
Where did you live?
But yeah.
Where did you go?
I'll cross the street from the high school.
Oh, okay. So you weren't far.
No, I wasn't. But my family was outside of town in a town called Maribel. It was 387 people. We had more cows on the farm than we did in the town. You know, people in the town.
Yeah.
So like, you know, and our next door neighbor was the mayor and also the town plumber. And our other next door neighbor was the blacksmith. The town blacksmith, the town gunsmith, and also the town grumpy jackass. Yeah. So we had a really diverse, you know.
There's a lot going on there, but with the same people.
Oh, absolutely, you know.
Can you tell me about the coming out as gay? Like what happened when you came out as gay? What was the process for getting to that point?
I mean, again, when I was like around 15 or 16 is when I started realizing that I was not. Like the only vocabulary I had was gay.
Yeah.
So I knew it was different from early on. I just didn't know what the fucking words were. So when I was like 15 or 16, I was like, well, I guess I'm gay. It's just a matter of time of coming out.
Yeah.
You know, and then it was just me slowly coming out to my friends and getting various reactions. One of my friends said I was too flamboyant. That they said to me, I think you're trying too hard. And the worst part was I wasn't at the time. I would then later on in life realize that actually what I was doing was embracing this part of me. But I didn't understand, and I really enjoyed what they perceived as flamboyant. But I felt like I couldn't be. So I had to be the likable gay. I had to be, I had to be, a gay character in Frasier, or a gay character, on TV, where it's one-dimensional. You exist for entertainment for the heterosexuals, and that's about it. So I came out to gay to some people in school, and then I started dating a guy in basketball, and then him and I dated in secret, and we didn't tell anybody. And I then thought, hey, this is gonna get out, so I should probably tell my dad. And then I told my dad, and then he called me the F slur and all the other things under the sun, and then kicked me out. And the same day, I went over to Danny's house, and she was a lesbian, and she told her dad she was a lesbian. And the same day, he kicked her out of the house. And one of my very early recollections of that time period is him screaming at her, and then me stepping in between them and saying, leave her the hell alone, with meaner words than that. And then him saying, I hope you die in a ditch. So like, I remember that being, me and Danny, we were kids. So we just went and we met with the landlord, and that day we moved in. That was what it was. It was and I wrote about it in a diary or a journal recently. Back when I was a kid, I read it recently, and I looked at my words and I talked about it so nonchalantly, like it was just another day in the life.
What are you gonna do? Like
me.
That's just your reality.
Yeah, exactly. And this was like this was just another day in survival mode. And then later on, when I was going to college, my dad, my mom wanted me to reconcile with my dad. So this began a series of me trying to reconcile a relationship with a man who probably didn't necessarily want me in his life to begin with. But, because my mom was such an influential person in both of our lives, we tried. And it didn't necessarily ever work. But when I went to college, I went down here in the liberal capital of Wisconsin, which is Madison.
Yeah.
And it was like an oasis of different ideas in a world that I often was never introduced to. And I went for theatrical production and design, and I fell in love with the world. I didn't really necessarily fall in love with my private college, but I fell in love with the world that I was in. And that's how I found burlesque and cabaret, because I went to the gay bars, and then I met people through the gay community, and I then found an ad on Craigslist from someone looking for an attractive twink who would be willing to dance in the background of a show. And then I auditioned. I went to his condo privately, which, don't do this. This is like all the red flags are going off.
Don't.
But I went to the audition, and it was fine. It was wonderful. It was a great experience. And I became really good friends with this guy who's a drag queen by the name of CeCe Ray. And CeCe Ray was a drag queen who worked with RuPaul and everything in the 90s, had his own traveling show for 5 straight years, traveled all around the country. And he started a new show in the late 2000s. And I became a backup dancer. And then I started doing more and more, and then developing my own acts, and became a solo burlesque entertainer. And then, because that doesn't pay anything, you don't get paid shit.
No.
I then got lucky enough that someone said, hey, you would be a great maintenance technician. Do you want to apply for an internship? So I did, and I got the job that day, and I started the next day. And then within 4 months, I was a full-time maintenance technician. And I then started getting my degree and 14 different certifications over the course of 5 years.
Yeah.
So that's where that's my mini story of like how that became to be. But I couldn't be who I am right now if it wasn't for that journey. Because then the burlesque world led me deeper down this rabbit hole of learning who I was. But the maintenance world prepared me for my future. And I didn't know that. I thought these were two separate entities, right? I didn't think these could ever line up. But they were actually working together. Like, This is when I talk to people about like what would my advice be to a younger me or what would my advice be to a younger kids, is that pay attention to the journey that you're on and don't miss an opportunity to educate yourself. Because while I was learning who I was learning skills that I'm using every single day and now making my living as. But I could never have known that. I thought I was going to eventually be a world famous burlesque entertainer.
I mean,
I was hell bent. Also I was pretty good. I don't want to sell myself short. You know, I had 12 different international awards. I competed at Burlesque Hall of Fame Weekender, which is like our Super Bowl in the burlesque world.
mm-hmm.
One of only 3 Wisconsin entertainers ever to do that. And I was very well known regionally as a great boylesque performer, which was a male
Boylesque. I've never heard boylesque before.
Boylesque is the equivalent to burlesque. And now, why do they gender it?
I don't know.
It doesn't really make sense, but there is a long history of men in burlesque. There's like over 100-year history. If you ever think of a guy who's really muscle bound and whatnot from the 1920s and 10s, and he has a fig leaf on him, that's called the beast archetype. And the beast archetype was a burlesque entertainer type of performer.
Interesting.
So if you ever think of a muscle man who's bald and has like a handlebar mustache with a fig leaf in front of his, that's definitely a burlesque entertainer.
I mean, I've gone to enough gay bars where like I've seen that, so I associated with that. But if I didn't have that perspective, I don't think I would have.
There's also the stage door Johnnies, and stage door Johnnies were men who were bringing women on and off stage. It would be like a group of men who would carry women on stage, or undress in their own way and show how the major sex appeal of this female character on stage. So like men have always been integrated into the art form. It's just like as a society we reject those type of things.
Well, I think listening to you talk about you doing the boylesque and then you doing the maintenance, there's a dissonance when you hear that because of the gender norms that are placed upon those things. And so this seems like the beginning, because you're not out as trans, or maybe don't even have the term trans in your vocabulary yet. So you are unknowingly already breaking down gender norms by doing both of those things at the same time.
When I first told a friend of mine that I was doing burlesque, I had to explain to them it wasn't drag. I had to explain to them that I was not pretending to be a woman. That was a real thing that I had to do to multiple people.
Did you want to?
Be a woman?
Did you want to did you want to be a drag performer?
For my 22nd birthday, I asked Cece Ray, my friend who got me into the industry, I asked her to put me in drag. That was my 22nd birthday wish.
Well,
now here's the thing. You can hear the egg cracking, but for some reason I was like, no, just duct tape the egg back together. We're good. I'm not gonna, I'm not that, Yeah. For those who don't know what I'm referencing, is when you're finding out who you are as a trans person, it's called the crack in your egg, or egg cracking. Have you ever heard this?
I've never heard that.
Yeah. It's an egg cracking moment. And then you open up the inside and the yolk oozes out. You can't stop it. Once you crack it, it oozes out, and that's, you can never go back. Yes. Once I wore drag, oh my God, 2011 maybe?
Yeah.
I like it. The floodgates of just my life was just, I just doubled down and tripled down and quadrupled down.
Yeah.
As I went around. I became a really flamboyant guy. I mean, all my suits, this is true. All my suits and all my button downs, all of them were rhinestoned. I had everything rhinestoned.
Yeah.
I had blue hair like I do now, but then I had a short and I always pompadoured it. It was always pompadoured. I always had gel with me.
Like V.
I always yes. I was telling V that when me and V were talking from Under the Desk News.
Yeah.
But also I always wore cowboy boots that were rhinestoned. And I always wore a bow tie that was rhinestoned. Yeah. So like my wardrobe was just glittery and insane. And that was not even on stage. That was just in casual. I would hang out with my friends in rhinestone outfits. And Matthew knows this is true, who's doing the recording right now. I would do the podcast with him in rhinestone shit, So like it was just who I was. And I was slowly going down this road. The very first thing I did for myself that led me down that road was I got my blue hair. When that was an act of pure rebellion, I had been an actor prior to this too. And in the stage world, you're not allowed to modify your body, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you're not allowed to, get tattoos, do these things. And if you do, you'll limit your options, right? Which is laughably absurd if you think about it. I think you actually open up options, but that's a whole different argument. But anyways, for me, I just started becoming more and more me. And it started with blue hair. Then it started with me picking the name Mercury Stardust. I have been Mercury Stardust since 2014. I might have been out since 2019, but I've been Mercury Stardust for over almost a decade now.
Yeah. So at what point are you able to like, would you hear the word or understand what transgender was and you're like, that?
Oh, fuck no. I mean, it took me, I think one of the very first times I really got it was probably when I met Cass Marie Domino. Cass Marie Domino is my older sister now. She's a trans woman in Madison who has been out for almost 25 years now.
Whoa.
She's been out, I don't want to say the dark ages of trans activism, but kind of.
It is what it is, yeah.
She's been out for a long time. And she has a really incredible story. But all that being said, I was doing a show here at a bar. It was just me and her. Never met her before, but I had heard about Cass Marie. And she was a really well-known drag performer. Everyone knew of Cass Marie in town. Everyone knew of me too, because I had already had like half a dozen awards by the time I met her. And I ran the Wisconsin Burlesque Association and the festival and did all this stuff, and it was developing a weekly show. So she was aware of me, but we never met. It just so happened we never met. So we did this show at a bar, and I showed up, and she came in, and she was so over the top, flamboyant and wild. She was like, "Oh my God, Mercury! Oh!" And she like gave me a big hug. Like, "Oh my God, honey!" And then I would be like, "Okay, this is a little much, And then I just kept on seeing her the whole night. That was who she was. It wasn't a show. It was 100% who she was, to the very core of her as a person. And then I saw that she was dating a trans man by the name of Ryan. And I was like, what is a trans man? And I was so out of the world. I didn't know that trans men existed, which a lot of people outside of the community don't fully comprehend,
Why?
So I don't really know. I think it's misogyny. To be honest, like I think that there is like, I think for a lot of people, I think for a lot of people, the biggest threat to them is men weakening themselves, And I think that, we heard these stories way back in Theodore Roosevelt's era, where he would describe men being, pussification of men, right? Becoming too pansy. We need to have more violence in sports, is what he said over 100 years ago, right?
Yeah.
It's always been a fear of masculinity not being strong enough as the previous generation. And I think there is a framework of right now, especially, that when you see trans femme people, it's like threatening, like, oh no, there's too much soy in the milk. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They get worried about these things that are just like, that doesn't make you femme. We're just embracing realities of ourselves, and we're not hiding it like we once did, But all that being said, I met Cass, met her now husband, and I just fell in love with her, and we talked, and I started realizing that I could be trans femme, but also date people who were women or non-binary or trans-masc. Like I started realizing these things. It started expanding not only my gender identity, but my sexuality. And the ironic thing about all of this it was like 2014, 2015. I had dated someone who was very much a TERF. Like now you would call her a TERF.
Can you describe what TERF means?
Trans radical feminist, a trans exclusionary radical feminist.
What does that mean?
So that's somebody who very much thinks of themselves as a feminist and believes that trans women should be excluded from femininity and womanhood. Like they're not real women, right?
Because they're trying to take away from the attention that women need.
Yeah, like some people think that it's just men who are speaking over women, you know.
It's almost like maybe appropriation a bit, or
yeah, you hear that a lot. You hear that same thing with drag queens.
God,
that it's like we're appropriating gender. And the thing is, though, it's so interesting when they say things like that, because what you're saying is you're actually walking up to the point and then missing it.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, okay, how could I appropriate gender, right? And because you're doing this and this and this and this. We all agree that doesn't make me a woman, right? Because I don't think me wearing a dress or me wearing makeup or me having earrings or long hair, I don't think any of that makes me a woman. So I don't know why you would think that.
It's still aspects of patriarchal ideas.
Yeah. And by the way, I always wore makeup like this. Mm-hmm. I wore dresses as a burlesque performer. I had earrings before I came out. I had long hair before I came out. None of these things make me a woman. The thing that makes me a woman is I know that's my real identity. And that's hard to explain. But I don't ask people to explain every part of their identity to me. So why do I have to explain myself to you? Because it's just innately so different from your lived experience, it's hard for you to comprehend. But I'm telling you right now, as a person with a big heart and like willing to listen to you, that I am who I am and I trust you're who you are. And I'm not going to make you question yourself. And I'm tired of you making me question myself, right? And I think that's all I'm asking. I think that's all most trans people are asking. Is just like, leave us alone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I want to exist outside of my transness. I want to talk about DIY. I want to talk about fix-it stuff. I want to do those things. You know, I don't want to be, linked to my trans identity for my entire life.
You don't want to be stuck.
I don't want to be
You're
boxed.
a multifaceted human.
Yeah, as we talked about off air, my TikToks are not one angle. They're like 10 different angles.
Yes.
On my podcast, the Handyman Hotline, which you should all listen to, by the way.
Yep. Good pitch.
Is 100%. Yeah, 100%. It's all different angles. I don't even talk about me being trans on the show most of the time, right?
Yeah.
It's innately in there because I'm a trans woman with a trans perspective, right? But I talk about how to fix stuff on that podcast every single week with my co-host, Maggie Conrad. And we answer questions and we do our things. And very rarely do we bring up queerness within the context of the show, right? Mm-hmm. Like outside of the context of the show, rather. So like, I don't know. I think that people are more fixated on it than we are in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. I have a question from one of my Patreon supporters, if you're down to answer. Comfortable with that?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. So if you ever want to ask questions to my guests, patreon.com/unfilteredfriends. Annika asks, sometimes you'll do a video response addressing a hate comment and you always do it with so much kindness and grace. Why would you say it is important for you to respond that way? And how do you find the energy for that?
If I respond in any other way that isn't grace, they win. They win. They lose when people see my humanity. They want to make me lesser than and make me other than human. But if I respond with grace and compassion and kindness, I undercut their words of cruelty, right? Mm-hmm. And that's why I don't do it to teach them a lesson. I do it so other people who are on the fence can see it. My videos are not just seen by that one person I'm responding to. It's seen by potentially millions of people, right? So the people who are watching in silent and aren't commenting are the people I want to see it the most, right? They are the ones that matter The people who are would describe themselves as center or describe themselves as libertarians. They're the ones that mattered to me because like oh, I know I'm also sometimes talking into an echo chamber, right? But not always. And it's important, even to people who are in my own chamber, to be on the same page and get it. That's good. And also, to be honest, it's also liberating for me because I'm not suffering in silence. I'm not just reading that comment and then letting it fester in my mind. I'm actually using it to A, elevate my voice, and B, to heal myself. Sometimes these things that I read do hurt me. I mean, it's, like, I'm not going to lie about it. I mean, yeah, of course it fucking hurts me. I'm a human being. When someone says they want me to take cyanide, or someone says they, we wish we had another gay Holocaust, when someone says those things to me, it hurts, right? But if I call attention to it and I use it to educate people on my humanity, you know what? That's healing. That's me walking through those emotions in real time in front of a camera. And I quite often, I don't rehearse those. Yeah. When I respond, I respond. And if I see myself trying to hit the same points over and over and over again, I will erase the whole video and not do it for another 2 weeks. I always make them as authentic as possible. So if you see one of those videos, I'm doing it one take at a time. I never do multiple takes in those videos for that reason.
And you had one video that me, especially as a creator, really stuck out to me. And it was real raw, real vulnerable, real emotional, talking about how people are saying that you're not doing enough. And when you said the phrase, you don't see all of the app mentions and video replies and DMs, that really hit home for me because I feel expectation heaped upon me just because I have a large following. And while I believe in using my platform to elevate others, one, I don't have to. And two, it's not possible for me to do it for every single community. So Can you talk a little bit about that vulnerable moment for you and why it was important for you to share?
What was interesting about that was I was already I had a 12-hour day. Right. And I was really tired. And I had just posted a video that I spent 3 hours on with my my production assistant. And Basil and I were so excited about that. And I was we were asking our audience for help. We're asking our audience to submit questions and ask me DIY stuff. And let's focus on the good stuff. Let's focus on the stuff that makes us happy. Because right now my tags are really sad,
Yes.
And then not just one, but several people made videos in response to me saying that I was being selfish, that I wasn't using my platform for enough good. And this was about a week or maybe 2 weeks after I raised $2.3 million for trans healthcare. And it broke me. I went, what? Why are they saying this? And then I read the comments and saw people that were echoing their opinion. And I was like, do they not understand what I just did? Oh, no, they do. They do understand what I just did. But they think I should be doing that every day.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, my God. And here's the thing people don't know. Last year, I did it by myself, right? I raised $100,000 by myself. My spouse and my friends came over to my house about 2 days later. And they had a private conversation with me and said, if you ever do that alone, we won't be here anymore. I was so unhealthy. I almost crashed my car on the way home because I was up for 48 straight hours. And I was not in a good place, and I was putting the weight of the world on myself. And my friends were like, you are doing too much. You are not taking care of yourself. All you're doing is making video. I was doing 5 videos a day at the time. Right. I was trying to help people as much as I could every day. And my friends were like, enough is enough. Right. So here we are a year later. I'm actually taking some back seat. I'm trying to diversify how we do things. I'm focusing on Instagram. I'm doing all the things. And I'm actually finding some happiness in my life while doing this really weird job that we have, right? And to see that broke me, and it made me feel like, what is the right way? How am I supposed to do this? Like even me, like I'm constantly checking myself. Every employee gets paid the same. I'm not taking a larger cut, even though I could, right? I'm doing all the things. The nonprofit got 100% of everything that we raised for trans people. You know what I mean? Like we did all these things on the most ethical way to do it, and I was still told it wasn't enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the biggest hard part is that sometimes there's a disconnect. They want to believe the worst in people. And someone said, one of the comments said that, why aren't you doing real mutual aid instead of going through an organization? Point of Pride is a 50c3 nonprofit organization. Has been around for 10 years. Is a recognizable name in the trans community. And we raised 6 times more money than they've ever raised all the years combined they've been around. That's how much we've helped them, right? The trans community never really supported them prior to us. So like we've changed the whole dynamic of that company and the whole dynamic of the nonprofit, and changed like 12,000 trans people's lives, from binders, HRTs, to surgeries, all of that, right? And the way we did it was, Point of Pride is vetting everybody. Everyone who applies gets vetted by them. If I just went to every GoFundMe I saw, or I'm still doing the same thing Point of Pride is doing, but on smaller scales. I can't look at 12,000 individuals by myself and just randomly select people. That's not this. What I'm doing is mutual aid. It's direct mutual aid, right? But it's something that's different. And I think it frustrated a lot of people, because people, you know what? They're desperate. This is a scary time for trans people. Do you know what I mean? Like 480 anti-trans laws at the time. And I think it's more at this point, but 480 at the time. And so many people were trying to get out of Florida. So many people were trying to get out of Missouri. So many people were trying to get out of Kansas or Oklahoma and Tennessee. So I understand the frustration. I get it. I understand the frustration and how scary and isolated it is. And often the trans experience is one of isolation. But here's the thing. I'm doing the best I can, and asking for our own community to doing more than they are capable of doing is detrimental to the community itself, right? And if we can stick together and we can support each other, just understand that I am doing the best I can. And I know I'm doing the best I can, but I also know they're doing the best they can too. And sometimes it can be hard, and sometimes you just gotta lash out. It's unfortunate that it's at someone else's expense, but I also understand it,
Yeah.
So
It's hard to be hurt and understanding at the same time sometimes. So I commend you on that. I don't know if it's weird hearing this from a stranger, but like, I've been really proud watching what you're doing. I think it's like such a beautiful thing. I've been kind of like a silent watcher, because especially as, a cis hetero, I don't even know if that's okay to say at this point.
It is. You're doing great.
And like, that's the hard part. Is like, you try so hard to say things, and then the rules change so quickly. And I was someone who was deeply entrenched in that stuff for a long time, but you're kind of demonstrating the purpose. You're helping me fulfill my purpose in this moment, which is to humanize the people that are on your screen. You see them as human beings instead of just pixels and someone who's there to serve you. Like, you need to understand that these are humans that have real life experiences. And like, while you can have your opinions, please do not forget that fact.
Yeah. And also TikTok, more than any, is a space where like, we don't make a lot of money on TikTok. I make a lot of money on my speaking gigs, my sponsorships, and Patreon, right? I don't make a lot of money anywhere else, right? I don't even do merch drops. So like, not yet anyways. So like, I think the most money I ever made on TikTok, to be fully transparent, is $500. Was the most I ever made on TikTok in 1 month. In
a month.
I made last year I made about $4,000 on TikTok all year.
Especially as someone who's been in the game. I've been doing this for 16 years. It's been my full-time job for 13 of those years. I understand the numbers. And I had a day I got 20 million views in one day, and I made $57 off of the 20 million. And I was like, if this was YouTube, that would be like tens of thousands of dollars. Yeah. What is the malfunction here?
I'm going to tell you something that's very brand new, and I don't want to like jinx us.
Okay.
But there's a new program called the Creativity Program Beta. Now, a few creators, me and a few others, I don't want to give any names to yet, have been basically given this opportunity to try this new program where it only gives you money if you make a video longer than a minute.
Over a minute. I'm in it now.
You're in it right now. So you know
I just got in. Yeah.
I will say this. I've been on it for about a week and a half. I have made more money in the week and a half that I have been on it than I have ever made in a single month.
Whoa.
Right? Yeah, so like in a week and a half, and I don't want to say exactly because I'm still like I'm early. I want to see it go out before I like say this is the one. But let's just say it's really close to 1,000, right?
Yeah.
In the first week. Now, if you do the math there, okay. Now, is that still what we want? I don't know. But you know what? My numbers have not been that great recently. I see that. Okay. What happens when I have a viral video at 20 million and it has over a 1 minute video? Who knows?
Boom.
You know? So I just want to say at least they're toying with it.
They're trying.
Right?
Yeah.
And I also think it's a really weird medium and how to get sponsorship and how to do it. It's not like YouTube. It's not. It's a whole different medium. And I, as someone who's trying to break into YouTube, right? I'm hiring an editor who's helping me do all this stuff. We're going to do long form how-to videos on YouTube. We have some up already.
Which always do well. Always do well.
Yeah. Well, right? It's a really like, we're trying to learn how to do YouTube, but I'm very good at doing short form. Very good at doing short form. But it's a whole different medium. You know what I mean? So it's interesting. Again, is impact. That's how I make my money is impact. Because people like what I do, so they want to hear me speak. So then I get college gigs and I get sponsorship to talk about being trans at like organizations, and I get sponsorship to talk to Fortune 500 companies. I'm actually speaking at Target's headquarters for Pride Month. In a month. Yeah, I'm doing all this really cool stuff, right? But all of that's happening because of the impact I'm having rather than the numbers I bring in. And that is the thing that I cannot stress enough to content creators is that like I get it. When we're first starting out, we don't always know what we're doing. But like, look for the impact you can have. And if you can swing towards that impact, that's where the bread and butter is. That's where not only you helping people, which is always good, but you're also like carving out a niche that is not, you're not able to, I'm not able to be pulled out. I'm stuck now.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, same with Jeffrey Marsh. There's no way to pull us out of the fabric of the internet now. The trans handyman is here to stay because she's a symbol now. You know what I mean? Very hard to, even my numbers dip and I'm not as relevant. I will always be relevant because of the nature of my platform. If that makes sense.
It does. I mean, I made a lot less money because I was covering LGBT back in the day on YouTube. Because advertisers I made a video helping a trans kid love and accept himself, and I was demonetized before I was finished uploading, but they would sure fly their rainbow flag through the month of June and profit from the community. There's actually a lawsuit against Google right now with a bunch of LGBT creators that are bringing up this fact. But with that being said, I would get messages from people saying that I helped save their life. And if I did that to one person, if there's one person who's still on earth because fuck a number, fuck a dollar amount, that person's alive. Whoa. And that's why I have a TED Talk called Influencer is a Verb. I'm trying to change the idea about what an influencer is.
I watched that. So,
you did?
I get it. Yeah, I did. I actually remember this. Like, I think I watched it before we met today.
Oh,
Like, yeah, but this is the thing that I find interesting about the internet is how we've impacted each other without always knowing, right? Like, I think it's interesting to view the internet like a wave because there's a ripple effect that happens. And, like you're saying about the lawsuit for the LGBTQ community on YouTube, right? That will affect other platforms, but it also affects how queer people on the internet are portrayed and how we communicate. And a fight for the queer community and a win for the queer community is often a win for other just creators in general.
yes.
Right? Like, I think that being intersectional with how we approach over this is really important. That's why intersectionality is such a big point of how I teach. I teach for renters because if I help a renter, I'm also helping a homeowner. But if I only help a homeowner, I'm not helping a renter. So if I take it from the standpoint of I'm helping a renter, therefore I'm basically helping a homeowner, then that's great. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And that's how I view all things. How can we help each other by helping the people who are the most vulnerable?
Yeah. God, that's wonderful. I knew this was going to be a good conversation. If people are inspired by you and want to reach out to you, where's the best place for them to do that?
They can always reach out to my team at Maggie@mercurystardust.com. They can also find me on Instagram, the YouTube, and also, of course, the TikTok. And I have a wonderful podcast called the Handyman Hotline. And you can always text or call us on a hotline. And all the information is at mercurystardust.com. And it's a great podcast. We answer 5 questions every week. We got a few segments that are really fun on there. And I just love doing it. And sometimes I call people. Sometimes when they call in, I love their questions so much. I call them. We got one woman who was literally on, she was like helping her kid with her homework. And we called her right when she was helping her kid. So really fun stuff.
Yeah.
Great things. I love it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your time, Jazz Hands. And thank you for being on Unfiltered Friends.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
Yeah, we did it.
We did it.